Hi everybody. Lately I've been working on these Iron Hands Marines, and they have lots of cables. Both cables that are hanging downwards, like drooping cables over the floor and whatever, and over the miniature, but also cables that are defying gravity. I call these the tentacables. And I got a lot of questions about these. Now, a long time ago, I already made a tutorial on how to both make the hanging cables and the draping cables and the standing cables. But I thought maybe it's time for a bit of a new one, because I also changed my technique a bit on how I make these. So I'll let you know how I make these and what tools I use and what not to do with them, and what model better to use than Captain YouTube over here. Right, so let's give this man some cables. He looks in need of a couple at least. So what you'll need is a couple of things. First, sharp knife and some sculpting tools. I usually use one a silicone tool and just a metal tool. Green stuff, of course, a bit of putty, some metal wire. I'll explain later why that is. A bit of water, actually a lot of water, and of course some coffee. Let me start there first. Now the final thing that you need is the black object that you see here, which is the roll maker. The roll maker from Greenstuff World, and this is one of the best purchases I ever did in my hobby time, as you might have seen in my in my feeds, because I use this for every project that I do, because you can make heaps and heaps and heaps of cables in all kinds of sizes with it. So what you get if you buy the set, and you can see my set is already a bit banged up and quite dirty actually. Doesn't really matter for the process, I have to say. Is you get 3 sets. One is small, one is medium, and one is large. And the difference is simply because there are ridges on these, and the difference is the width of the ridges. So the small one makes the smaller ridges, and the large one makes the larger ridges. And what you also get with it is guides, which you can just attach to the tool like this. And the whole idea is that you make a sausage of green stuff, which I'll show you in a second. And then you lay that on here, and you take another one of these and you roll that over the other one. So you get 2 guides, or you can also add a guide to the other side, but I hardly ever do that, because that actually confines you a bit on how wide the rolls can be, because the guide has a bit of height as well. So you can use 2 large ones, and what you get is a roll with quite a big, this one broken actually, a roll with quite a big ridge size, and you can use 2 small ones, and what you get then is, of course, very small ridges, like over here. But the neat thing of this is that you can also combine, of course, different sizes. So you can use a medium with a large, and then you get all kinds of weird shapes. And it gets even weirder if you attach it like this, because then you can add I don't even know how to call it. You will add an angle to the things that you're making, and you can make all kinds of weird tentacles, octopus tentacles, and nasty other stuff with that as well. I usually stick to the same size and the same direction, simply because that's how I work. Because in my opinion, that works the best for mechanical tentacles, but even that doesn't stick you to only what comes out, because there's still a difference in what you can make, because you can make very thin ones, like these more dish-likes, or you can actually make broad ones, which are more like this. And I'll show you today both how I make these. Now, Greenstuff World also sells a an XL version of this, the Roll Maker XL, which I also bought, which is very cool as well, because you can make longer tentacles with that. At least that's what I thought, and that's also the case. The only thing is that the small here from the XL is actually almost wider than the large from the regular one. So you can't make what I would have hoped is I would have hoped to get simply these but bigger, so that I could make these cables but longer, because the length of my cable here is confined by the width of the plate, right? So here I can get longer cables, but as my ridges are bigger as well, I can only get very big ridges, which is not always as useful for tiny miniatures. I mean, on a tank or a dreadnought that should be fine, but on a Space Marine that will look out of place. What I do like about this one is you also get a curved one. So the normal ones are triangular ridges, but you also get a curved one on there. So you get more like spheres that you roll out. So not as useful as I had hoped, but still very cool. And if anybody at Greenstuff World is listening, please make these with these ridges, because that would be so awesome, because then I can make endless cables running around all my miniatures. So much for the introduction. Let's get going. First, some coffee. One of the most common questions I get is, do I let the green stuff cure before I work with it, before I make cables? And the answer is no. I simply cut it off and use it. There's no curing in between. However, there is a difference between the positionable cables, because what I showed you here, there's a metal wire inside my cable, right? And I'll show you in a second how to make that. But that allows me to bend wires to whatever position I like, which is very cool. But if I do this with a non-cured green stuff, I will just mush up all the green stuff. So these I allow to cure first. However, simply the hanging cables and the cables that go over like the X over here, that's just straight after mixing and get to work. Now, step one is I pick out a little bit of green stuff. So what I did in my previous videos, I used Vaseline to make the green stuff non-sticky. Green stuff is very sticky. It will usually stick to the things that you don't want it to stick to. So if you have it on a tool and you want to attach it to the miniature, it will keep sticking to your tool and not to your miniature. It will stick to your hands. It will stick to your working board. It will stick to your cup of coffee. It will stick to anything. And that's very annoying, and it will mess up the cable making process as well. So I used Vaseline in the previous video, which is perfectly fine and works very well. The only thing is, once you finish your miniature, you need to wash it with a bit of soap, because otherwise the grease, the Vaseline on your miniature, will mess up the paint that you're going to apply afterwards. Which is not a big problem, but it's another step in the process. So what I do actually now is I just use boatloads of water. And how I do that is very easy. Let me move things around a bit here. As I just dunk my finger into the water, I roll it over the sausage just to make it wet. That's it. And while working on it, I will try to keep it wet. So this is going to be fine for a while, but it will dry out, of course, because that's what water does. If it does, I'll just dunk my finger in the water again and I'll wet it. And that's it. Now, what I do to make the cables is, first I want to make a uniform roll that's about the width of my plate. And for that I use the back of the plate. I simply put it on top and I apply some pressure and I roll it into a sausage. Use quite a bit of force. There we have it. Okay, so that's nice and uniform. Then I'll cut off a piece that's about as big as the plate that I'm using. Can be a bit longer, not too much. Smaller is fine as well. If it gets too long, and once I start rolling the plates, that end over here will start flailing around and it will mess up your process as well. So don't make it stick out too far. Yeah, and now this is like a quite a thin one. I usually try to match the thickness of the ridges to the thickness of the wire. So if I have a thin wire, I'll try to use a thinner ridge than for a thicker wire. So for this one, what I'll do is I'll pick up this wire. And now that it's wet, it's actually, as you can see, doesn't stick at all. So I actually need to take some effort to pick it up. I'll put it on the plate. Again, I take some water. Wet up the plate. You'll see it draw into the ridges there. So that seems that's more than enough. I pick out the matching plate. I put it on top. And now it gets a bit tricky because this is the part that you need to get used to the most. What happens a lot is you simply press very hard and start pushing. And if you do that, you'll just squish the whole sausage into the ridges and you don't have a wire, you just have a mess. And that's why you see all that green stuff still stuck in my ridges over here. So that's not the way to go. What I do is I start rolling very gently so that I know that it's rolling, because that squishing usually happens if the green stuff gets stuck to the plate and then you wipe it into it. Wipe it, I don't know, whatever. So you start rolling quite gently actually, and you start applying more and more pressure. Just roll it a couple of times, and I put a little bit pressure on the right, a little bit pressure on the left, and I move it around. And then when I think it's done, I'll take it away. And now you will see a couple of things. You'll see that it's gone thinner over here, and that's because I'm not using the other guide. So my plate will be more like this. So this will usually be the thin end. But overall, you can see that I've made quite a nice cable actually. So the ridges are very thin here, but it's looking fine, and I think we've done a good job. So if I want to start using this, I'll cut off the thinner end over here, and there's an end over here that doesn't have any texture. I'll cut that away as well. So now I'm stuck with a perfectly fine cable. This I can start using. So I'll take a knife with a sharp tip as possible. And usually I would have already thought about where I want to put my cable. However, this time I didn't. But I can imagine a cable running from the gun, from the optics of the gun, to maybe go here above his elbow or around the back over there. I don't need to plan it out completely because I can just take it as it goes, right? And you see what I do is I take that tip and I try to stick the green stuff, and then I just push it to the place where I want to have it. This is usually the tricky part because the green stuff is now wet, which means it's very tricky to see where it's going to stick to. It might not even stick to my miniature at this point because it's not sticking, but it also might not stick to my tool. So it will either drop off, fall off my tool and move all over the place, or I will put it on here, move it about around a bit, and it will fly away like this. You see, it's not really stuck at all. So this is another tricky part. So you just need to move things around quite gently and see where it sticks or not. I also noticed it sticks less to the silicone tool, which is why I have it here as well. So I wet my silicone tool with a bit of water too, and I just push it onto the place where I want to have it. I think this is fine like this. So right now, it's just simply a wire stuck to a surface. This will not look very cool in a finished miniature. So usually when when the cable is cured, I will go back with a piece of fresh green stuff and sculpt a small connector to it to make it more convincing. But it kind of depends on where on the armor you're working. Yeah, and now I need to go decide where it goes. So I'll first make it droop down a bit. And as it goes to the optics, I actually think it might be cool to make it go to the helmet. All right, does that help? Like that. And I'm already bending it a bit into shape with my silicone sculpting tool. All right, and I think I'll just connect it to the back of his head. Right here. Whoops. Okay. There we have one cable. Am I happy with that? Well, actually, I think it looks kind of dumb. So, no, I'm not happy with that. Well, the easy thing here is it's not fixed, so I can just remove it. Was a nice idea, but it wasn't for me, so I'll move it down. I also like hanging cables, so I can make it go down and go to the back of his armor. Yeah, that's better. I like the look of that, and maybe I'll make it go into the back of his armor pad over here. There's probably some connector over there, right? Awesome. Yeah, that looks way better. Yes. All right. Great. Make a bit of a dangly cable out of it. Dangly bits. All right, that looks great. Cool. Yeah, way better than to the back of his head. Okay, so that's the basics of it. But now there is, of course, tricks. There is tricks. So let me show you a couple of tricks. Because first I want to show you what these plates are capable of more than just the thin cable. So if I make a real thick sausage of green stuff, I hope I can make it clear. Like that, yeah, that's good. All right. So I'm taking my large roll maker. This is the largest gauge there is. And now what I wanted to show you is this. Because if I take the matching plate, which is also large, I can, of course, just roll it. Again, start with little pressure and build up the pressure until you feel that something is happening. This is really something that you need to get a feel for. Yeah, all right. So there we have a very clear reached cable, right? This looks cool. You can just use it as it is, which is pretty neat anyway. But what you can also do is put this back on the table, cut away a small piece, so you only have the cable left. And now take the flat end of the plate again and start rolling it. And here you see the magic happening. Voila. Yeah. Awesome. My table is a bit dirty, as you see. There's some stuff in there. But what I got now is I got a different profile. And I really like this kind of profile. This is really 40K to me. Like ammo belts and flamer belts and whatever. So that's very cool. So that's first making the big ridges and then flattening them down. You can also do that with the medium ridges. With the small ridges, that's going to be not noticeable because the ridges are simply too small. So that's one trick. And the other trick is, of course, the mixing of plates. I'll show you what that does. So another sausage. If I take a large plate and another large plate, but now I put the I put it in a different direction. That's the word. So I put the bottom plate like this and the top plate like that, so perpendicular to each other. What you get is a very cool effect, like this. Makes a different sound as well. Rolling it. Here you get more of like the a gear maybe, or a tentacle, or like a more organic style. And you can bend and rotate and do whatever. You can do some really cool chaos tentacles with this. Yeah, that's great. Cool. Yeah, so that's one. The other one is doing these 145 degrees. Let's see what happens if I do that. This is where you get in really weird territory. Also, I'll put this one upright and that one 45 degrees. And yeah, okay, this here I really need some water because it immediately stuck to my plate. So the more complex shapes, you really need to lubricate them well. This needs quite a bit of pressure. And that's what you get. Oh, wow. Yeah. Look at that. It's more like a rock drill or something. Yeah, you can make some cool things out of this. All right, so that's another option. And you can, of course, mix sizes. Mixing sizes works best if you go one size down. So a large with a medium or a medium with a small. A large with a small doesn't really work, for me at least. But yeah, once you have one of these, which I highly recommend, just go ahead and go crazy and try some stuff, because you will discover many things. If I take a large with a medium and put them in the same direction, so perpendicular, no, sorry, parallel, you'll get this interesting effect. So there's ridges of, is that clear on the camera? It should be. Yeah, so there's ridges of different sizes, and there's a pattern to it. But the pattern is a bit too irregular for me to really like it. I mean, it's possible, but it's not really for me. I hardly use this combination. But I can imagine some pretty great effects with stuff like this, right? Cool. Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's basically the gist of it. So I highly recommend getting you a set of these. They're not that expensive. I'll put a link in the description, and you can have tons of fun with it. Now, we are not done yet, of course, because there's two more things that I want to show you. One is more about maybe the anatomy of cables, because a cable hardly comes by itself. If you understand what I mean. Look, if I pick up this one, but I do a couple of times, not always. So if I make a miniature like this, I do a couple of things. First of all, I mix thicknesses, so thin ones, thicker ones, but also different ridge sizes, as I just showed, but also flat ones, so to have a difference in texture. And what Games Workshop does a lot as well is mix those thin ones with the thick ones, with the flat ones with the ridged ones, because it gives a really cool contrast. It's very noticeable if you start looking for it. And that's not as hard as it might seem, because what you simply do is you take a very small piece of green stuff, wet it down again, and you flatten it out. And you flatten it out some more, and you cut it in half, and you flatten it out some more. Yeah, and here it starts sticking to my plate, which is not very nice, but that's just what it will do because the water will actually make it stick now because of the capillary action, right? Yeah, so I'll try to make this as flat, as thin as possible. Once I get to a thickness that I like. More. Yeah, that should be fine. All right. So what I want to do is I add a secondary cable that will run alongside this first cable. And maybe it will go from the front here and it will join that cable and will move up a bit further. Or maybe that one will actually go to the back of his helmet, as I didn't do before. That might be cool. So that means, so if I don't have a textured cable, I can make it much longer, of course, than with the plates, because I'm not bound by the width of the plate, right? So I'll just take the whole cable. This is usually the point where, the moment where my cable drops off, but if your tip is sharp enough of your knife, it will just stick. That's gonna be fine. This is really going to the optics. So Captain YouTube here wants to shoot from the hip, but still be accurate. So what he's going to do is going to connect that camera to his ocular system. And they don't have Bluetooth or Wi-Fi in the 41st millennium, right? So no wireless connections there. We all need cables. I want to make a bit of a droop here. Yeah, that's it. Before I connect it. Yeah. Don't want to clog the ammo exhaust, of course. Voila! All right, then it'll join that cable. Run along the length of it. And maybe it will make a small detour over here because one of the tie wraps got detached. It's still connected here, but not over here. Voila. Because the 41st millennium definitely has tie wraps. Yeah, just be patient and be careful when moving this around. And really don't hesitate just to tear it off again if you don't like it. That was one of the biggest lessons for me, I guess. That once you stick to it, stick the green stuff to your miniature. Don't be convinced that that's the one and only look. Yeah, there we go. And then to the back of his helmet. Maybe to that connector over there. Yeah, that would be cool. That would be awesome. Just like that. The left one was an open connector, so I'll just moosh it in there. No. Sorry, I'll go for the right. Remove this one. All right. Always make sure to make some extra bends in there. extra bends are more interesting to look at. Okay, that's it. So, 2 joint cables. Now, it looks a bit off because why is it stuck here and then hanging loose? And that's because he obviously did some cable management here, but I'm not seeing that cable management. So we need to make some cable management, which is taking my thinnest, I don't even know if you can see it, which is, and make it even thinner. I want to have it as thin as possible because you need to still be able to see it on the miniature, but it needs to be thinner than the cable that I just attached, because otherwise it will look weird. Or maybe not, I don't know. Just give it a try. Usually I do this once my cables are dry, because that's way easier to do. So again, I pick it up and I try to put it over here. No. Yeah. Okay. Come on. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Yeah. And that looks immediately heaps better. Now I need to cut off that, all that. Yeah, cool. All right. That went actually quite well. That's one. Another piece, because here is a weird angle as well if I don't attach it to anything. And now I can just attach it to the gun. Oh, that's too short. One over here. Underneath. And put it over there. And voila! Alright, now that is some proper cable management, Captain YouTube. And of course what I did is I mushed the cable on the back. As I said, it's easier if you do it once these cables are dry. But it's manageable. I mean, there's going to be a backpack over there as well. Anyway, so you probably won't really see this cable. Okay. Yeah, I am quite happy with how that turned out. I'll put this a bit lower. Like that. That is looking great. Oh, man. I really love cables. Cool. Now, the other thing, the final thing. No, yeah, is it the final thing? Maybe that's the final thing. Maybe not. We'll see. The other thing that I want to show you is how to make the cables with a wire inside of them. Right? That was the promise to make them positionable. Now, that is actually not so hard. What you need is a piece of wire. Surprise! Nobody would have expected that one. You need a piece of wire. You can have many gauges of wire. I try to match the thickness of my core wire to the thickness of the wire that I'm going to make, because like a thicker wire, the green stuff is, once it's dry, it will kind of resist bending, right? So the wire inside needs to be strong enough to actually bend the green stuff. So what you do is, let's say I make a medium one. So I want to use my medium roller here. My medium roller and the side. And I want to make a cable that looks a bit like this one with the flat ridges. This means I need to have a wide gauge roll maker. Can I make it work like this? Yeah, probably. and a reasonably thin wire and a reasonably thick sausage. So let's see how thick this is going to be. Yeah, that should be good. So I straighten out my wire. Sorry, I need to do this on camera, of course. Straighten out the wire. And what I do is I roll it around. Need to do it on camera, of course. Come on, Miko. Pay attention, please. So I roll it around. At this point, I'm trying not to use water, because if the water gets between the green stuff and the wire, it will actually detach while rolling. So here you need to just rely on the amount of water that you used until now. Because otherwise you're going to run into trouble. And once it's fixed, you can start using water again, but try not to use too much while attaching it to the wire. If you start noticing that it detaches from the wire while rolling, just take a new piece of wire and try again. Because if you try to fix that messed wire, you're just causing yourself all kinds of headaches. So I take my medium roller. Yeah, let's just see what happens. And first, again, I flatten out my wire that now has a metal core inside. So that it becomes nice and homogeneous. All right, looks great. Yeah, then I put it in on the plate. If my wire is too long on one side, I can just clip it off, because I don't want it to run into the guide. Like that, that's fine. I add some water. Okay, and now the pressure becomes even more of an issue, because if you press too hard, you will hit the wire eventually, and the water will seep into the space between the wire and the green stuff, and that will mess it up. So don't press too hard at this point. And if you want deeper ridges, just use a larger size. You will need to get a bit of a feeling for this too. But this is the point where your green stuff will start detaching from your wire usually. But that looks great. All right. Okay. So now I already have a quite cool cable. So what I could do now is, as I said before, I don't really want to bend it right now, because my fingers will start mushing it and I'll mess it up. So usually I'll just put it away. I'll stick it in a piece of putty, let it cure for like a day or something, and then the next day I'll have my cured one, which I can start working with. But I wasn't finished with this one yet. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to flatten it back again to get this effect. But I think my ridges were not wide enough. We'll see what happens. Very gently start rolling it again. Well, just a couple of times per run, and then see what happens. Another one, a little bit to the right. Yeah, all right, that looks pretty cool. Let me see, come on. Yeah, that actually turned out very cool, very nicely. All right, I'm happy with that. So, as I said, I'll just pick it up, stick it into the putty, and leave it there. Now I'm going to do the same, but with the large roll maker. Alright, that looks fine. So I'll put it onto my plate. Yeah, and the idea was to make it perpendicular this time, right? Okay, add some water. Whoops. Let's see what happens here. Ooh. Yeah, it's cool, but not my cup of coffee, unfortunately. So I'll flatten it out. Start again. Yeah, that's more the way I like it. Cool, yeah. And then I'm going to flatten this one back too. Like that. Okay. Bit more. Bit more. Just a bit more. More. Yeah. There we go. Awesome. Yes. As you can see, this one is actually tapered a bit, so it's thicker here than over there. And I don't mind. I actually think that's a cool look. All right, so this one's done. I'll put it again into the putty, allow it to dry. I can put this putty away too, so that's out of the way. Yeah, so I'll just pick out one of my cables that I made before, clip the ends of it back a little bit, like that. And I also cut down the ends of the green stuff away a bit, because the ends are usually the least detailed. I don't want those. I want to have a cable that's as clean as possible. All right, there we go. Voila. Okay. And then I take out my trusty drill bit. And I thought I'll make it come out of the back of his shoulder over there. So what I do is I simply drill a hole over there. And now I need to make sure that I'm not messing up my previously constructed cable. That would be a shame. Yeah, so I forgot to mention that you also need a drill. And I'll put it in. Yeah, all right. No, just there we go. All right. And now I still need to decide where that cable is going to go and what it is going to do. Because I can either bend it upwards over him, maybe looking in the same direction, or make it go downwards under that. I think that I like that best. Like that. I think that looks a bit more menacing. Watch out for my cables. Yeah. Yeah, really? I don't know. Maybe a bit more like this. Just play around with it and see what you like. Of course, I'm messing up my cables back there again. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Now we're back together again. Sha-la-la-la-la. Once I get some paint on this, you will probably not notice it anyway. Now, do I like this? No, I actually don't. Let's try to make it go up more. Yeah. Yeah, doesn't matter. Yeah, all right. Make this a bit shorter. Yeah. And now, to top it off, I will add a skull. Because skulls are awesome and 100% certified 40K. All right, so I take this damaged skull, missing it. Is one of his front teeth. I'll take out back my trusty drill bit. Oh, here of course, sorry. And I'll just draw it where the spine would attach, right? That's a logical point of entry. Yeah. Liking this already. And there we have the start of a nice old servo skull. Yes. We did. Cool. That's it. Bit more bending. Yeah. There we go. So both the draping, drooping, dangling, whatever you want to call it, cables, cable management, thin cables, thick cables, and positional tentacables, all wrapped into one part here. Now, what I would do next is give this servo skull guy some maybe some small tools. Yeah, but for now, I think this looks pretty awesome, and that's it. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.